All right, so you were off on June 7th, but you would have been working what hours?
If I had been there, I would have been working. At that time, we were working from, that was on a Saturday, I think, or Sunday. We were working from 3 p. until, 3 in the afternoon until 9 the next morning.
Did you know Maggie Murdaugh?
Briefly, I met her, I had seen her several times at the Murdaugh house, but personally know her, no.
Did you get to know Paul Murdaugh?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And how did you get to know him?
Well, he came to see his grandparents, Mr. Randolph and Miss Libby.
Did he come more often than perhaps others?
Yes, he did.
All right, well, tell us a little bit about him.
Well, he was always very polite. He always offered to help do things for Randolph and Miss Libby. He would like, Miss Libby liked ice cream, so he would always say, Miss M, Grandma M, because that's what they called her, would you like me to get you some ice cream? And she would usually say, yeah, because that was her thing. And he would say, get it for her, and he would tease her about it. But he always give it to her.
So he came around a little more than perhaps any of the other
Of the grandchildren.
grandchildren? Did you get to know Mr. Alex Murdaugh?
Yes, I do.
All right. Is he here today? Is he here today?
Yes, he is. Right there.
In the blue jacket?
The blue jacket and blue shirt.
Thank you. On your shift, from the normal shift, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., how often would you say Mr. Alex stopped by in those years that you've been there?
Not very often, not during that time period. 6 or 7 times, maybe.
In the 5 years you've been there, the 6 or 7 time?
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned Mr. Randolph. Who was he again?
He was Miss Libby's husband.
Did you take care of him? Was he a client of yours?
Well, he was not my patient, but I helped him. I assisted him when he needed help.
Was there a point in time when his health became fairly poor and that you decided he needed some help?
Yes, there was.
And if you were there, would you provide that assistance to him, whatever he needed?
I did.
All right. Was there ever a time when Mr. Mr. Randolph, do you know when he passed away?
Yeah, June the 10th.
So it was shortly after the murders of Maggie and Paul?
Correct.
Before he passed, was there ever a time when the defendant came over later at night?
When he was called, not late at night. Well, yes, there was. It was on the 6th, I think it was, the night before Maggie and Paul. I was there that night, and he and Miss Maggie came. They brought donuts
Okay. Why would they bring donuts?
because Mr. Randolph had asked for some donuts.
Did he like donuts?
Well, they were Krispy Kreme, and you
Right.
couldn't get them at the time in our area.
So Mr. Randolph liked Krispy Kreme
Yes,
donuts?
he did.
All right. Was Mr. Randolph, was he awake, though, when they came there?
No, he was not.
And did he ever actually see Alex and Maggie?
Not to my knowledge. Alex did go to the room and look in at him, but he was asleep, and they chose not to wake him. I told them they could, but they said, no, let him sleep if he can.
And how did he react when he got up and you told him that they visited?
He was, he said, they came tonight, and I said, yes, sir. And he said, that's strange. I said, well, you asked for these donuts, and Miss Maggie brought these donuts to you. And he says, well, is there a raspberry one? And I said, yeah. And I got it for him, and he ate a little bit of it, and then he said, I just can't eat the rest.
So he thought it was strange that they came that time of night?
Yeah, he was surprised.
Was there anything that, I know Mr. Randolph was very sick, but was there anything that was going on with his mental faculties?
No, he knew what was going on right up to the last time I spoke to him, which was the day before he died.
And tell us a little bit in your experience with treating Alzheimer's patients, people with declining dementia.
They
Tell us a little bit about your experiences with them and how they maybe at night, how they rest, and what your treating them
Well,
involves.
anytime I mean, sometimes they're fine with whatever goes on around them, they just ignore it, or they speak out in the beginning and say what they want to say. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it don't. As it progresses, they get more like a baby. You know, if you wake them, sometimes they'll go back to sleep, sometimes they cry. It takes time to calm them and, just guess, because you really don't know, like a baby, you don't know what's wrong. They might be hungry, they might want something to drink, they might just want to be turned.
Okay.
Whatever the situation is, you just have to guess and keep trying until you get it right.
And what time do you put Miss Libby in bed?
Generally at 8 o'clock. But now she don't get out of bed. She has a total care, she stays in bed. We give her her night medication at 8 o'clock, which helps her to rest, along with other medications she has to have.
If Miss Libby does go to sleep, what would you prefer as her provider, healthcare provider?
To let her sleep, but if a family comes by and they say they want to wake her, I don't object, I let them wake her.
Make the court's indulgence.
Yes, sir.
My name's Dick Harpootlian. Can you read my lips? Dick
Maybe,
Harpootlian?
yeah, I think so.
Okay. And I represent Alex, okay?
Okay.
Now, let me just focus in on, I guess, the reason you're being called here today. You were asked by the state, was it strange for them to show up that Sunday night at late?
It was unusual.
That was the word you used, not strange, and that's the word you used in your statement you gave about 10 days after the murders to Sweat, isn't that right?
That's correct.
Did you know they'd been to a ball game in Columbia before they stopped by? Did Mr. Murdaugh
No,
tell you
sir,
that?
I did not know that.
Okay. And if Mr. Murdaugh, Alec, had stopped by normally during the daytime, you wouldn't have been there, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And Alex and Maggie that Sunday night stayed about 30 minutes?
Approximately 30 minutes, yes.
It was late?
It was late, and
How late do you think it was, like 11 o'clock?
I think it was closer to 9.
Okay, 9.
If it hadn't been long, put Miss Libby to bed, and she was starting to doze, and Mr. Randolph was already asleep.
And Miss Libby, let's say 2-3 years ago, in 2021, what was her state in terms, she has dementia, is that correct?
She does have dementia, well,
was it back
Alzheimer's
in-
dementia. It is basically the same thing.
Okay.
It affects the body in the same way. At that time, she could not walk, but we could pick her up and put her in the wheelchair, pivot her, and take her and put her in the bed, and she could feed herself. But now, she is deteriorated, and she can't feed herself. She can't even give herself a drink of water.
Mentally, did she recognize her sons when they came to see her?
Sometimes, sometimes not.
And has that gotten progressively worse?
That is how it works.
Was she aware of the fact that her husband of, I think, 40 years had died, Mr. Randolph?
We told her, we took her to the funeral, but, within a couple of weeks, she doesn't, it didn't seem to recognize the fact. For about, I say, a month, she would call for him from time to time, and then now she doesn't.
When Paul, while you were there, when Paul or some other family member would come over, would that calm her down?
Sometimes. Paul had a way of having a calming effect on her. He would always remind her of the past. Like, Grandma, you remember that whipping you gave me with that fly swat? Things like that.
And did she watch television a good bit?
She still does, but she doesn't, she used to would play along with the games, but by 21, she wasn't doing that. She was just watching.
Okay. Beg the court's indulgence. No further questions.
Anything further? Thank you, ma'am. You may step down.